Hola a todas y a todos. Seguimos en el campo de las filósofas ante la tecnología. Y hoy nos vamos muy lejos. Nos vamos a Inglaterra a entrevistar a Gillian Youngs, una filósofa que nos va a analizar el mundo de las nuevas tecnologías y de su influencia en las mujeres. Seguidme. Hola, buenas tardes, Gillian. Buenas tardes,
Gillian.
Andrea. Es un gran honor para filósofas en la historia poder tener una entrevista con Gillian, que nos va a ayudar Andrea, colaboradora de Filósofas en la Historia.
It's a privilege for female philosophers in history to have an interview with you, Gillian.
Estamos traspasando fronteras. Hemos estado estos días en el Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, también haciendo las entrevistas.
So we are now crossing some borders after a visit in Madrid in the National Research Council of Spain.
Y vamos a contactar con ella porque es una activista feminista internacional que tiene muchos estudios sobre las nuevas tecnologías, sobre Internet y su repercusión en las nuevas posibilidades democráticas.
So what is exciting about this interview is that you are such an engaged feminist activist and also remarkable scholar with a very good amount of work in the field of internet and how the new communications shape the political participation and the democracy, and especially of female and women's political participation.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias, Andreas. Estamos en las filósofas ante la tecnología y lo dejamos todo en tus manos.
Thank you. So we are now in our section of philosophers in technology, and now presentations are already done, and we can start the interview. So, before we start, I would like to double check that we have double check the questions we had agreed beforehand.
Yes.
So I will quickly read them, then you can give me some feedback. The first question is please describe your path towards your academic research focus on digital economy. Is that correct?
It would take a long time to go through all of it. So I just want to sort of pick out some important highlights. I think what Paz was saying at the beginning, and you were translating, Andrea, about the combined feminist activist way that I come to my work, and my scholarly background in international relations, and as one of the scholars shaping globalization and the study of digital economy, I feel that I'm both an innovator and a disruptor of the scholarly arena, in the sense that I feel my work has been informed equally by what I've learned from other activists, and particularly working with women and from feminist perspectives, about what an inclusive digital economy would be, what the information society should be. And that's very much combined with the research work I've done, both applied and conceptual and theoretical. And from my experience in academia, that is unusual. And I think that I'm still working hard in a way for that, the power of that combined approach to be understood. And I would particularly emphasize that how important this is post-COVID, where there's so much interest now in people being digital, being online, and where often I feel that there's a very reductive approach to that, whereas my own approach from being an activist and working with people on the ground to empower them in digital ways, to work with them around strategies for empowerment, is that our digital lives should be thought of in a very holistic way, not divided up into work and, for instance, our social media activity, but they should be seen from a deeply practical, philosophical way about what is the meaning of life for us as groups, as communities, but very importantly, as individuals.
Well, thank you so much for this, I would say, this extraordinary summary of your contributions. But that leads me to a second question that really interests us, and is if you could please tell us more about how does your work as a feminist scholar and feminist activist shape this unique approach you have towards the virtual environment?
I think, again, obviously there's a very long answer to that, and it threads through a lot of the work that I've written in different ways. But fundamentally, I think that feminist work prioritizes the context of the individual. So it doesn't take liberal ideas or liberal democracy as just an abstract or something that operates at, for instance, the state level. It brings everything right down to the individual. And how can they understand what it is to be digital? How can they navigate this world to achieve what they need? And I would make 2 points about that. One, in the first work I did, I used the concept of consciousness raising that we use in feminist work. And of course, that's informed by Marxist ideas, but feminists develop it in a very particular way that when you're in an unequal position in society, however that's configured, there is a problem for you of how you are conscious of your own possibilities, because all the signals externally tell you that they are very limited. And the struggle in a lot of feminist work is to release people's inner desires and inner ambitions and inner sense of self beyond those boundaries that are imposed on them. And a lot of feminist consciousness work operates in that way. And the principle of feminist consciousness work is that we do it together, that we're not alone, that we can't realize our own ambitions alone. We need to be with other people, to communicate with other people, to work with other people, to understand those. And then linked to that is the work I've done, linked to numerous projects of my own, and including more recently, is the importance of your inner resources for forging a digital life. So again, so much about the technological idea of the digital is that you have to learn the software and you have to know these things in order to be present and to be active and to be powerful. But what we've learned in a lot of research with what we might call hardest to reach people in the digital economy is that what matters most for them in unlocking the digital economy is their own lives and their own needs and their own thoughts and hopes and what's important to them. And then they can start to make the steps to find out how they want to be in that economy, and what they want to do. And I would just add to that from the entrepreneurial work that I've done, which has been a big strand of my applied work, that in the entrepreneurial world, there's a real emphasis on, again, you can't do it on your own. You need to ask for help. You need to find people who can help you. And that's very much, again, another part of the ethic that is woven into the kind of work that I do.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting explanation. We wonder. So far, I think we are thinking about how this internet and how the digital has challenged the traditional thinking about democracy, and particularly women's political participation.
I think there are two areas I would remark on there. One is the nature of the digital economy. Right from the beginning of the internet, one of the first projects I did was right at the beginning of the internet, an international UNESCO project with other activists and women around the world. I've never, ever forgotten that. In those days, we were relying on email. And this was an international project with I would say, of probably 30 participants, but then more than that going forward. And I've never, ever forgotten the kind of communication we did back and forth in a very granular way, in a very detailed way about what the internet was, what we wanted to do with it. And I think that laid a very important foundation for me in seeing how women had been held from one another internationally previously, how the masculine domination of resources and power had really prevented a lot of community action by women, a lot of political connection and cultural connection by women across the world in a very deep way. And that was a hugely symbolic thing for me. For instance, in laying the foundations, this goes back to the links between my activist and my scholarly work for the founding of the International Feminist Journal of Politics, which I co-founded in 1999 with a colleague from Australia and another colleague from the USA. And that project couldn't have happened without the internet. We couldn't have easily launched it as an international venture without the internet. And that links to this issue about the internet, to answer sort of your fundamental question of the way that it allows horizontal communication, which can cut across the vertical structures. So this is obviously fundamental for activism of all kinds, but it does link to the earlier points I made, because what it indicates is that with action, the internet has destabilized, has weakened some of those vertical structures, has opened up parts of them to horizontal communication. But it also, if I might emphasize, it allows horizontal communication that kind of doesn't worry about the vertical structures, that kind of takes place around them and allows strength to be built in new communities almost outside those vertical structures, the traditional ones of power, the state, local authorities, organizations. Yeah, it actually allows much more varied, hybrid, marginal activity to take place.
That's so interesting. We wonder as well about it's a concept of digital literacy, and we are very interested in knowing what that means to you.
I'm starting on a very new journey with that again, where I'm hoping to set some new parameters out of the work that I've done previously. For me, one of the disappointments about the birth of the World Wide Web is the extent to which social media, as both a concept and a practice, has dominated how people see the internet. When for someone like myself, the most powerful nature of the internet is as an information arena. It allows access to information, lots of information, much more easily than it was available to people at grassroots level before. And it allows it much more flexibly. And it allows you to build networks that can make sure information is available. And I think and that's what digital literacy is about. So the teaching, I launched one of the first MAs in the world on the internet studies, and I had a module there that was all about web research, which would still be regarded as avant-garde now. And this is 20 years ago, really. And I will be using in this new venture of mine, the model that we use there, which brings together all the things I've covered in what I've said to you now. Yeah. All the approaches I've had. The most powerful thing the internet is for the information that is available on it. And unfortunately, in the early days, I think you're too young to be aware of this, Andrea, but in the early days of the internet, it was all the talk was about the birth of the information society. Now, we know the power of the media and we know how important media is. So I don't want to dismiss all the media-related things that have happened with the internet because they're really important. But we've kind of lost that sense of the information society. And I think a lot of young people and citizens are being raised with an idea of the internet that is really restricted primarily to social media. And that's a small fragment, really, of what the internet and the power of it for groups, for individuals is. And it's that I'm passionate about. As someone really who's been an equalities campaigner and activist all my life, what I'm passionate about is the informational power and the communicative power of the internet.
That's so interesting. And so, Pat, we are done with the focus. Perdón, que hemos hecho las 4 preguntas, pero a mí me gustaría hacerle otra más, porque ha hablado de la importancia de la información, ¿no? De Internet como un lugar donde está la información.
Pero a mí me interesó mucho cuando estaba leyéndola esos momentos en donde ella decía que el usuario de Internet no podía ser simplemente receptor, sino que tenía que ser también autora, que esa sería una línea más, que esa es la línea en la que está Filósofas en la Historia. Es decir, estamos intentando crear opinión escuchando a las filósofas y a un nivel, bueno, pues de imaginario colectivo, a un nivel divulgativo, pero también con rigor. Entonces, ¿qué piensa ella? Que son palabras suyas, de ese usuario que actúa, que crea, que no solamente reproduce, sino que es creador.
So Pat is asking a very interesting question because when she read your work, she was very excited about this idea of the citizen or person who uses internet and the digital in an active way, not just as a passive agent of just consuming this whatever, but in the opposite way, like and she reflects about what this we are doing now is just so female philosophers in history is a YouTube channel primarily that tries to listen from the female thinkers and female philosophers, their own voices, and put those into this arena. So she asks you, what do you think about this?
I mean, I think that she's spot on with that. It's all about agency, and that all, because I've always done international work and development work. Of course, the whole issue of empowerment and agency has been central for me, and I've been privileged to work with lots of amazing colleagues who I just do a small amount of work in that way, but who do a great deal of work, are very experienced. And I'm pleased to say that they align with my sense that empowerment has to come from within. You have to find your own path. And I think that when we look at, if we're saying feminist scholarship, feminist philosophy, and a lot of feminist work, and Paz will be interested that I am doing some new work on that now and some new thinking. The truth is, collectively, I think we've been inhibited by working a lot within the existing structures. And I think probably we could have been a lot more innovative and disruptive in getting ourselves and our messages out there online in a big way. Are you with me? At scale. That I think that there's been lots and lots of really good work done in individual ways, and in small group ways, but I think if you look at social media, if you look at capitalism, if you look at media, it's the scale. It's the scale. And I would love to be involved in something internationally now where we were trying to get lots of funding to actually have an online presence, an international online presence of work by women, for women, about women, and for all, about a more inclusive internet and a more information-driven agency and literacy around the internet. Because a lot of it is about education, and a lot of the work that we all do could feed into education more. But I think it's the scale issue that's the issue. There is a lot of work out there online by women, by feminist scholars, by activists, but it's the scale issue. You know, Facebook, etc., dominate in a way that it would be lovely to think if we had some more scaled up projects, as we talk about in entrepreneurial work, and well-funded, really well-funded work that had real presence so that they could be used as resources by other players in education and business and whatever, So that's an aspirational area of my work right now. So again, it's why I'm in touch with people like you, Andrea, and Paz, because for me, I'm ready to be involved in things like that. And I'm ready to campaign for it, because I think it's where we are now. That's where we are now. We don't see enough scaled up presence of feminist knowledge and the kind of agency and empowerment drive that we bring to the table, and a lot of knowledge about that. As both of you know, there's lots of talk nowadays about diversity and inclusion by people who've never worked in that arena. What we want to hear from is the people who've dedicated their lives to that work and worked in that arena. And I have no problems trying to put myself forward in mainstream settings, saying, look, I'm happy to contribute. But we know that's not how it works necessarily. Bringing people in from the margins who have that marginal experience doesn't happen automatically. Again, we have to disrupt.
Thank you so much. That was very inspiring what you shared with us. And Paz, es que me gustaría hacerle una pregunta, ¿puedo?
Hombre.
So, because I've been thinking since I hear you sharing all this, and what intrigues me the most now is the aspect of fake news and disinformation, and to me it's a risk. And when I see my students, and I have the hope that okay, at least these are like higher educated people who are able to discern and to be critic, but I'm not really sure, and I'm actually concerned with the citizens in general who they don't have a higher education, because I think this aspect of digital literacy should be integrated in every level of the formal education. And
all I would stress is, Andrea, part of my point about having this work done at scale and present online is absolutely so that it can be available to teachers and people more widely. So it's, fake news in a way is an aspect of the mainstream political and media arena that obviously dominates online. We can't wish away capitalism as things stand. We're kind of stuck with that. But I am always clear that education is the main route through it. And part of the problem is, that I'm very interested in mothers. We did a lot of work with our initial international campaign around mothers and digital literacy, because part of the problem we have is, of course, young children are already mad social media fans, by the time they're 3, some of them. Yeah. So we have to think at that level. Andrea, you're quite right. It's through every level of education. And the idea of higher education is that it should trickle down. But I think that while in my early days as a digital scholar, I thought there would be a lot of focus on critical digital education and digital literacy, I've been surprised really to find how that has not happened. And part of it is the fault of governments and policy, not understanding what digital economy is, not treating it as the information society in a political sense, in a civics sense. But also it is the problem of it being reduced to technology, it being too much about technology. And of course, the information society, it's partly about that, but it's a lot more about content, which is what we're talking about with fake news.
And it's also what we're trying to create here, like
absolutely
scientific content. So, Paz, tenemos unos pocos minutos solo porque ya se nos agota el tiempo. ¿Podemos ir concluyendo?
Sí, hombre, lo primero, darle las gracias que haya querido participar en Filósofas en la Historia y, bueno, que abrimos un camino de posibles relaciones futuras y, bueno, por supuesto que se lo comunicaremos y darte las gracias a ti, Andrea, por haber hecho este recorrido con Gillian y esta entrada tan interesante en Filósofas de la Historia cuando atravesamos ya fronteras muy importantes. Dale las gracias desde toda la organización que tenemos por aquí detrás. Muchas gracias, Gillian. Thank you.